I'm Martin Daubney. Now, while Labour MPs may pat each other on the backs for their thumping majority in last Thursday's general election, is there a storm brewing on the horizon? Because according to electoral data, Labour lost more than 500,000 votes in regions with the highest Muslim populations of the UK, with the party's attack dog Jonathan Ashworth even losing his Leicester South seat over a local backlash to the party's stance on Gaza. Well, Prime Minister Keir Starmer was asked yesterday if this growing trend is a concern for him and his party. And here's what he had to say.
Prime Minister, you secured a significant landslide at the general election, but in areas where there's a high Muslim population, Labour either lost seats or had their vote share slash. Do you accept that there's a problem with the relationship between the Labour Party and British Muslims at the moment?
Well, the first thing I'd say is this, that very many people voted Labour in that general election who've never voted Labour before. So we now hold seats in parts of the country that have never had a Labour MP. So this is an incredibly strong mandate. Of course, wherever we weren't able to secure votes, I'm concerned about that.
What about the issue with British Muslims? Trust has clearly broken down there. The election results show that. What are you going to do to try and rebuild it?
Well, we've got a strong mandate. Of course, where we didn't secure the votes, we'll address that. But I don't think there's any disputing the strength of the mandate that we have, and that it's a mandate for change, for renewal, and for politics as public service.
Not sure Sir Keir Starmer answered the question there, but joining me now to discuss this is Mohammed Amin, former chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum and a Liberal Democrat member since October 2019. Welcome to the show, Mr Amin. OK, so the Labour Party lost 5 seats at this election to pro-Gaza independent candidates who fought on a ticket of Gaza. Nigel Farage has been saying for some time now, sectarian politics is rearing its ugly head in the United Kingdom. Did this general election prove his point?
Good evening, Martin. The result of the general election clearly shows that a significant number of Muslim voters in the UK feel so strongly about what's happening in Gaza and feel so strongly about the missteps that Keir Starmer had, particularly early on, his catastrophic interview on LBC, where he said it was okay for Israel to cut off food, water, electricity, and then took 12 days before making it clear that Israel had to abide by international humanitarian law. He's had a number of missteps, and that's what's resulted in the decline of support amongst many British Muslims.
We've seen some very, very disturbing sights and scenes, though, on that campaign trail. Jonathan Ashworth, who lost his seat in Leicester South East, a 22,000 majority overhauled. He was going to be surely one of the cabinet in the Labour government. He was harangued and harassed on the streets. And Jess Phillips, a Labour MP, when she was giving her declaration, she was booed, harangued by a very, very raucous mob inside that hall. There's been a lot of criticism, Mohammed Amin, that the modus operandi, not just the result, is very, very concerning.
It is very concerning. I condemn it unequivocally. Behaviour like that has no place in British politics or British public life at all, and it is utterly deplorable. No doubt about that. Emotions can run high, but you still have to behave in a civil manner. You express your emotions by the cross you put on the ballot paper.
Yeah, and yet we've seen, David Amos obviously was murdered. We've seen a Conservative MP had his office firebombed, forced out of politics. We've had these sort of threats. And look at Batley. Batley, a place I went to in the town square at a free speech rally, when after the Batley grammar school teacher, still to this day, 3 years in hiding, that seat went to a local independent, a pro-Gaza independent called Iqbal Mohammed, defending a pro-war, attacking the pro-war racist elites and saying that was for Gaza. Yet the entire political establishment was silent about the Batley grammar school teacher in that area.
Sadly, over the last 10, 15 years, a lot of our public life has been poisoned by extreme emotions from all parts of the political spectrum. We saw it in Scotland with the behaviour of many people in the Scottish independence referendum and the immediate aftermath, with independence supporters being viciously nasty about union supporters. We saw it in 2016 during Brexit when we had an MP murdered by a Brexit extremist. We see it from all parts of the political spectrum, and it's wrong whether it's done by a Muslim, by a Scottish independence supporter, or by a white nationalist Brexit supporter.
Yeah, but if you look at the direction of travel, Mohammed, I mean, since October the 7th, the huge majority of abuse that's been happening on the streets has been from pro-Palestine protesters, from people who support the Gaza movement. You must admit there's been a massive surge in anti-Semitism. The direction of travel is these kind of independence, these kind of politics is becoming increasingly fractious.
It's wrong wherever it comes from. Since October the 7th, we've seen a lot of that from British Muslims. We've also seen it from other British people who are equally outraged about Gaza. The rise of anti-Semitism comes from some British Muslims. It comes from people in the far right. There's been a massive spike in anti-Semitism as well as anti-Muslim hatred since October the 7th. These kinds of overseas events have enormous potential to damage community harmony in this country from all parts of our society, and we need to stand up against it.
Quickly, Mohammed Amin, do you think this kind of sectarian politics is here to stay? Can we see people increasingly voting along religious lines in Britain?
I don't think so. I think for taking Labour's specific problem first, I think this problem is going to go away. Already, we've seen a change in tone from this government compared with the previous government. I've read some of the stories after Keir Starmer's telephone call with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where he stressed the importance of a two-state solution, something that Netanyahu himself is strongly opposed to. It's quite clear that this Labour government will be very supportive of international law. And if the International Criminal Court does hand down an indictment against Netanyahu, which hasn't happened yet, the warrants have been applied for, but they've not yet been granted, the government has made it quite clear that international law should take its course. And I would expect the emotions and this issue to die down very quickly.
OK, well, let's hope that happens. Mohammed Amin, former chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum and a Liberal Democrats member since October 2019, thank you very much for joining us on GBN tonight.